Geronimo Stilton, The Hour of Magic, The Eighth Adventure of the Kingdom of Fantasy, read by Hosea Tongho. That morning, when I stuck my snout out of the window of my office, I noticed that the air had smelled a little bit different. It smelled like it was about to snow. Oh, how I love snowy winters in New Mouse City, my home sweet home. Oops, I almost forgot to introduce myself. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton. I have brown fur and glasses. I'm the publisher of the Rodents Gazette, the most famous newspaper on Mouse Island. Anyways, as I was saying, the day in New Mouse City, I would tell was snowing way on the way. I was so excited. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of freezing weather or heavy-duty shoveling. But how have you ever seen a city under a blanket of snow? Let me tell you, there's nothing more beautiful. Plus, when it snows, I love to go sledding with my dear nephew Benjamin, and my warm paws with a cup of hot cheese by the fire. I was still dreaming about hot cheese when the phone rang. Ring! It was Grandpa William Shortpaws, who boomed, "Grandson, have you finished writing the book?" When I didn't respond immediately, Grandfather screeched, "Have you forgotten? You need to write the new Kingdom of Fantasy book. It's due next week." I hit my forehead with my paws. Rats! How could I have forgotten? Of course, I couldn't tell my raging grandfather this, so I said, don't worry, Grandfather. I've already written the whole book in my head, sort of, and lots of good ideas. What my grandfather doesn't understand is that in order to write the book about the Kingdom of Fantasy, I have to go there. On a recent trip, Queen Blossom gave me a magical sapphire ring that'll let me visit whenever I want. Unfortunately, I'd misplaced it. The only other way to get there is by dreaming. Remember that this is the most important book of the year, and readers are waiting impatiently. Do you understand, grandson? Grandfather William went on. Then before I could hang up, he added, "Oh, and by the way, we're all coming to your house tonight to celebrate Aunt Sweetman's birthday, okay?" I hurried to squeak, "Of course, certainly." Worried, not about the birthday, but about the book I had forgotten to write, I left my office and headed home. I hoped that talking and walking would fill me with ideas, but my mind was blank. As I walked, I noticed the most delicious aroma. First, I passed the Squeakies, my favorite bakery in the city, and smelled their warm cheese donuts. Yum! I bought a box to serve for that evening for Aunt Sweetman's birthday. Naturally, I had a taste. A donut to make sure they were fresh. Okay. I confess, I have no willpower when it comes to cheese donuts. Next, a table for tails, a popular cafe. I smelled a tangy blue cheese quitch. I bought a gigantic piece to serve for Aunt Sweetman's birthday dinner. Finally, in Sing Song Stone Square, I bought a beautiful flowering pink plant from Geraldine Green Whiskers, the florist. Aunt Sweetman loves flowers. It was the perfect gift. Now, if only I could come up with the perfect idea for my book. I got home just in time to greet my guests. The first to arrive was Grandfather William. He is a stickler for being on time. Then my sister Thea roared up on her motorcycle. Thea and I are opposites. She is a daredevil, and I'm a scaredy mouse. Next came my cousin Trap, who loves to tease me, followed by my dear nephew Benjamin. While we waited for Aunt Sweetfur, we began to decorate the house with balloons and streamers. Benjamin had made a purple banner, Aunt Sweetfur's favorite color, that read, "Happy birthday, Aunt Sweetfur." I grabbed a ladder so I could hang it over the fireplace, but as I climbed, the ladder began to wobble. "I'll help you, Joe Master," my cousin volunteered, gripping the ladder. I gulped the last time Trap volunteered to help me. I ended up in the emergency room with a cheese grater stuck in my fur. But that's another story. "Are you sure?" I stammered nervously. "Don't you trust me?" Trap retorted. Before I could answer that, he began to sneeze. Achoo! As he leaned over the ladder, it fell, and I tumbled onto the ground, landing on my tail. Ouch! And when would I learn to trust my instincts and not my cousin? "Are you okay, Uncle?" my nephew squeaked, running over. I shook the broken bones. "I'm fine," I assured Benjamin, standing up. It was then, though, that I realized I had broken something. My watch! Rats! I loved my watch. It was a gift from Grandfather when I took over the Rodents Gazette. Tears sprang to my eyes, but Grandfather put a paw on my back and said, "Get a grip, grandson. It's not the end of the world. I know how to fix your watch. Bring it to my famous mouse watcher fixer, Minute Mouse. You'll find it at the shop. Time flies. He repairs and sells clocks. I think you'll find the place very unusual. I was just about to ask him what he meant by unusual when the doorbell rang. Aunt Sweeper had arrived. Happy birthday, Aunt Sweeper! We shouted. The party was a big success. Aunt Sweeper gave us all big hugs and appreciation. We had a fabulous dinner with Quitch, which was a hit, and delicious strawberry cheesecake. And for dessert, yum. As soon as I left for work the next day, I decided to go to find Time Flies, the clock shop grandfather William had told me about. I took the subway and got off onto the west end of the city. From what grandfather had told me, the shop was located at the alley of the lost time in the oldest part of town. I couldn't find the street listed on my map, so I hailed a taxi, but the taxi didn't know the street either. Eventually, I had him drop me off on the Remembrance Square. I wandered along Memories Road, which led into Useless Regrets Avenue, until I realized I was completely lost. I went into a deli to ask for directions, but the mouse behind the counter just blinked. A clock shop on the alley of lost time? It's this way, or maybe that way, or he mumbled. I continued on, asking everyone I passed for directions. Mental skateboards, construction mice, business mice, but everyone said the same thing. Never heard of it. I was about to give up when I spotted an elderly lady. Time flies, she asked incredulously. There's a clock shop on the alley of lost time. Who gave you this address, young mouse? My grandfather gave it to me, I explained. Your grandfather, eh? Now I understand. Once upon a time there was this shop, and it was very famous, but almost no one remembers it anymore, she said with a faraway expression on her face. No one remembers the corner cheese store where you could buy cheddar bread for a penny, or the candy store with the most delicious blue cheese fudge for a nickel. She rambled on and on. When she finally pointed me in the direction of the clock shop, I thanked her for help and continued on my way. After a few minutes, I saw in the alley in front of me, but then a bus went by, and when I looked up, the alley had disappeared. Huh? Where were my eyes? Were they tricking me? Was the cheese falling off my cracker? I shook my head, and the alley reappeared. How strange. I walked steadily ahead, and soon found myself at the front door of the clock store. A huge antique wooden sign with a clock face on it hung over the doorway. It read, Time Flies, Clock and Repair Shop. Underneath in a small writing it read, Time waits for no mouse, so use your time wisely. I went in, and it was right then, that the whole adventure truly began. As soon as I entered the dimly lit shop, I heard the steady rhythmic tick-tock of all the clocks inside. They were all big clocks, small clocks, clocks in all different colors. They were all ornate, gold-plated clocks, and wooden cuckoo clocks. There were chandelier clocks, clocks that sit on mantelpieces, and an instant later, I smelled the intense scent of roses. I followed the scent to the corner of the shop, where I discovered a huge blue pot filled with climbing roses. And that's when I saw climbing. The flowers' branches twisted together and went up, and up all the way through a skylight in the roof. The extraordinary plant grew half on the inside and store and half on the outside of the store. I walked over to it and bent down to sniff the beautiful star-shaped flowers. Ah, there's nothing sweeter than the scent of a fresh rose. Suddenly I felt a pull on my shoulder. It's an amazing specimen, eh? A voice squeaked in my ear. This plant is called Starry Rose. It holds a magical secret and comes from a very, very far away. I turned around and saw a kindly-looking, gentle mouse, the age of my grandfather. He had a white hair and a bushy mustache, and he wore a pair of old-fashioned glasses. Right away, I knew this had to be Minute Mouse, my grandfather's friend. Oh, hello, my grandfather, William Shortpaw, sent me. I have a need in repair for a watch, I began. The old mouse brightened. William? Oh, of course, you must be his grandson, Geronimo. I know all about you. William is so proud of you. He said that you were doing a great job running the Rollins Gazette and that your books are fabulous. I didn't say it out loud, but I was shocked. I mean, usually my grandfather likes to say things like, Grandson, you need to work harder, and grandson, you need to work faster. And grandson, the paper was so much better when I was a publisher. I was still thinking about my grandfather when Minute Mouse yelled over to his shoulder, Eloise, look who came to visit. William's grandson. From the back, an elderly rodent appeared. She had white hair and wore a dress embroidered with roses. Oh, you mean the grandson of my dear friend William? I recognize you from the photo, she exclaimed happily. She showed me a photo of grandfather and me in a silver frame. "Your grandfather gave me this," she said. "He is so proud of you. He told us you were interviewed on Mouse TV and that you were the Distinguished Squeakiest Journalist Prize." Again, I was surprised when my interview on Mouse TV aired. Grandfather complained that it was on the same time as Monday Night Mouse Ball, and when I won the Squeakiest Journalist Prize, my grandfather snorted and said, "They are giving you the prize to you?" Oh wow, maybe one of these days I'd figure out Grandfather William, but for now I kissed the elderly lady's paw and said politely, "Pleased to meet you, ma'am." She smiled. "What a gentle mouse, just like your grandfather. Now please, make yourself comfortable," she squeaked, leading me a cozy room in the back of the store. In addition to dozens of clocks on the walls, the room had a clock face rug and two poor chairs. Eloise ventured for me to sit on one of the chairs. It was a blue with a yellow starry pattern. There were two enormous dragons carved into the armrest, and a golden dragon head with glittering eyes peered down from the backrest. I felt like I was sitting on some kind of throne. How strange. I was about to ask Eloise what was this all about, and the dragon heads, but then right that minute, Minute Mouse appeared. I showed him my broken watch and exclaimed, "Ah, I recognize this. I sold it to your grandfather many years ago. Don't worry, I'll fix it." Minute Mouse disappeared into his workshop, and I sank into the blue porch chair. Ah, it was so comfortable. A moment later, Eloise returned with a cup of tea and a plate of warm cheesy cookies. The teapot sugar bowl was engraved with tiny clock designs, and the silver sugar spoon was shaped like a clock hand. The cookies were shaped like numbers from 1 to 12, just like the numbers on a clock. How coordinated. I also noticed that even the napkins Eloise offered me had a little saying on them, that they were about all time. One read, "There's no time like the present." Another read, "Always make time for yourself." Eloise sat in the porch chair across from me, working on a piece of embroidery, a clock design of course, and squeaking away. As you can see, we really like clocks. In fact, we hardly leave our shop, since our life revolves around everything within these walls. The elderly mouse revealed, looking around with a satisfied air. "Every one of these clocks has a story," she continued. "For example, that one is an ancient sundial that tells the time of a day by the position of the sun. The sun hits the pointer, which casts a shadow on a stone tablet, marking the time. That one is a strange water clock with a complicated system of gears and weights, and this is a rare clock with detailed figures of a cat chasing a mouse." I shivered. Who would want a clock with a cat chasing a mouse? This beautiful gold pocket watch belonged to the founder of New Mouse City, Grant Gentlemouse. It sings the Mouse Island anthem every hour on the hour. Eloise went on, "But this piece was that the most value for Minute Mouse is that the watch had made his very first day. He had been making it and working on it with his grandfather, the great George Pawsley Clockers. It is the most valuable to him because it holds wonderful memories." "That's nice," I mumbled, feeling a wave of sleepiness coming over me. I couldn't help it. That dragon portrait was more comfortable than my super deluxe super plush sleepy wrap mattress. Before I could stop myself, I let out a loud yawn. "Oh, how embarrassing." "Excuse me," I apologized, turning red. "Don't worry, dear," Eloise said, with a kind smile. That portrait makes everyone sleepy. Minute Mouse takes a nap there every day after lunch." Then she continued on with her story. "All these clocks were collected by the grandfather of the grandfather of the grandfather of my husband, and everyone has a story. The most interesting story is about an incident about magical instrument kept in the store that is about to stop and able to stop time and then make it go backwards. It's called the tick-tock timepiece." I wanted to ask Eloise more about the tick-tock timepiece, but I felt another yawn coming over me and decided I'd keep my mouth shut. Still, I couldn't stop eyeliding from drooping. There was something about the portiere and the tick-tocking of the clocks that relaxed me. Before I knew it, I fell fast asleep and began to dream and dream and dream. I woke up because I thought I heard a voice calling, "Light! Light!" The voice seemed to be saying, "Huh?" I stood up and looked around. I was still in the clock shop, but it was night time. Mr. Minute Mouse, sir, I called out, tentatively. Miss Eloise, but no one answered. Just then the voice called out again. This time I realized it was saying, Night! Night! How very strange. Even stranger, the voice was coming from the starry rose plant. I ran to the plant and looked up at the skylight. The sky burst through the opening into a dark sky sparkling with stars. It was then that I remembered how Minute Mouse had mentioned the starry rose, which was a magical plant. The starry rose looked like the beanstalk and a rat and the beanstalk. The old fairy tale I read when I was a mouseling. I was hoping Minute Mouse would appear to clear things up, but the voice began shrieking louder and louder. Hello, down there. What's taking you so long? Of course, I had no idea what was the voice talking about, so I yelled back, My name is Stilton. Geronimo Stilton. Who are you? And why are you hollering up there? But the voice didn't answer my questions. In fact, it was sounding more and more exasperated. By the time, come on. I don't have all day, you know. Climb up, climb up, climb up. Let's get the show on the road, I demanded. I tried to ask another question, but the wind took my voice away. Rats! And if I wanted to know who was calling me, I had no choice. I had to climb the plant. So I gave myself a pep talk and began climbing. Holy cheese, it was steep. Why did I have to be afraid of heights? I slipped and slid on the leaves, which were wet with dew, and the scent of roses was so intense that it made my head spin. I love the sweet scents of flowers as much as the next mouse, but have you ever stuck your head in a rose bush for more than 10 minutes? Let me tell you, it is pretty overpowering. In fact, it's almost suffocating. I was afraid that I would faint and go tumbling head over paws to the ground. Headlines flashed before my eyes. Sweet scent suffocates Stilton. Publisher plunges from the monster bush. Recovery not so rosy. As I climbed, I did my best not to look down. But you know how that goes. Whenever someone tells you not to do something, you only want to do it more. Eventually, I snuck a peek. I was so high up I could see the whole city. I climbed and climbed until I reached a sea of clouds as soft as my great-grandmother's fancy furs, wall-to-wall cat fur carpet. Come to think of it, everything in great-grandma Fancy Fur's house was carpeted, even her toilet seat. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes. Next, I spotted a pink shimmering sky. It was then that I realized what was magical about Starry Rose Plant, and led to the kingdom of fantasy. Closing my eyes, I jumped off the Starry Rose Plant and landed safely in the white blanket of clouds. Phew. I polished my glasses to see better, squinted my eyes, and far, far away into the horizon, I recognized the shining roof of crystal castle of the Blossom. Blossom, the queen of fairies, her majestic majesty, the lady in peace of happiness, she who brings world harmony in the most beautiful of beauties. Dear, sweet Blossom had summoned me to her castle many times in the past few years, and now my adventures in the kingdom of fantasy was practically famous. I had met elves, ridden unicorns, and many other things, and every time it was more exciting than the last. I was still thinking about all my adventures when I heard this voice again. Night! I turned and saw in front of me a small creature, dressed in a full suit of shiny silver armor, complete with a helmet, metal gloves, and leggings. In his hand he held a sword with a hilt in the shape of a water lily. Hello, small creature, I said. What's your name? Small creature, it's me, Night. Why are you calling me small creature? I mean, I am a small creature, but still, all we've been through, how could you not recognize your old pal? The small being huffed and clearly insulted. I scratched my head. The voice did sound familiar, but couldn't I place the face? Oh right, it was completely covered by a metal helmet. Okay, Knight, I'll give you a hint, the small creature offered. I'm now a knight, just like you. I'm the knight of the silver water lily. I thought hard. What kind of creature would like water lilies? Well, frogs, of course. Suddenly, I knew exactly who that was behind the mask. It was my dear old friend Scribblehopper. He began to guide me on my first trip to the Kingdom of Fantasy and help me on many other adventures. Scribblehopper, it's you, I squeaked. I tried to give him a hug, but it was a little tricky with all that armor on. Take out my sword, Sir Geronimo, Scribblehopper croaked. He waved it off in the air, practically slicing my whiskers off. Oops, he muttered. He only gave up his armor as it was so heavy. I can hardly take a step in it. By the way, can you please lift the visor off my helmet? I raised the visor and the nose of my familiar friends appeared. "Oh wow, I can't breathe," the frog announced. Then he jumped off and out of the arbor. "Phew, it was like a sauna in there. I think I lost 10 pounds," he croaked. Then his voice brightened. "Well, now that I'm out, let's go see the queen." And just like that, we're off to go find Queen Blossom. We all walked along the white cloudy trail for hours until we ended up in a green meadow filled with tons of colorful flowers. The moon and the stars were disappearing, and the sun soon would come up, illuminating the kingdom of fairies with rosy light. Oh, how I loved the kingdom of fairies and its queen, Blossom. However, right then I began to hear a strange sound, buzz, and before I knew it, there was that happening again. Scribblehopper announced in a solemn tone, "Here you are, the queen." I looked around, but I didn't see Crystal Castle, where Blossom lived. Instead, I saw an enormous tree with a gigantic golden beehive in it. So that's where the buzzing was coming from. A swarm of bees flew towards me. They formed an arrow and they pointed at the beehive. "Hey, you Buzz. Follow us and no funny stuff, understand? The queen, Buzz, awaits you," ordered the head of the swarm. I blinked and stammered. "Oh, the queen? What?" I approached the beehive and saw a large bee standing in a minuscule balcony adorned with pink flowers. "Kneel before the queen, Buzz," the head of the swarm commanded. Then the head of the swarm stung me, just for good measure. Ow! I didn't want any more stings. Meanwhile, the queen looked down at her nose at me and asked in a pompous tone, "Knight, I know all about you, and now my regal niece, the princess, is ready to leave." "Huh? Your niece? Leave for where?" I asked. Scribblehopper hurried over, saying, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. The mouse, I mean. The knight is a little slow to uptake, but I'll handle him. So where's the little princess?" Then he outbowled me and muttered, "Shh, we are already late, and I'll explain everything later. But here's a quick version. We need to save the Kingdom of Fantasy and the little princess, the niece of the Queen of the Bees, who is coming with us." The head of the swarm proclaimed, "Little Princey Buzzy, niece of our beloved Queen of the Bees, a third of the name of the noble buzzers, is leaving the beehive in a grand adventure with Sir Geronimo of Stilton and the Knight of the Silver Water Lily. All hail Princess Buzzy." All the bees in mid-air was buzzing. "Hail to Princess Buzzy, buzz, buzz, buzz." A second later, a little bee flitted towards us with her nose in the air, just like the queen. She was sprinkled with golden powder, and her wings shone with all the colors of the rainbow. She was followed by a group of other little bees. Scribblehopper described each one to me in a low voice. "That's the hairdresser for the little princess, and that's the massage therapist, and that's that, and that, and that." My jaw dropped. "Do we have to bring all of them with us?" I whispered to Scribblehopper. Unfortunately, the little princess heard and began to huff. "Buzz, how dare you? I am royal blood. Do I have to sting you in the snout so you don't forget?" She launched herself at me, but a life skills coach stopped her. "Think before you do it. You have a problem?" she cautioned. "Will singing you solve your problem?" the little princess muttered under her breath in a sing-songy voice. One thing was clear about Princess Buzzy. She didn't like being told what to do. After the princess put away singer, Scribblehopper announced, "We're off to see the queen." Finally, I couldn't see and wait for the queen. Queen Blossom. She is a great queen. Scribblehopper led the way, with the bees followed behind. I went last, squeaking, "Wait for me." This time, Scribblehopper led us into a forest. We found a gravel trail that wound through raspberry and blueberry bushes, until it stopped in front of a pond where pink water lilies floated. The pond was near a waterfall, and next to it was a rock in the shape of a heart. A well-dressed toad perched on the rock. Strangely, the toad looked like Scribblehopper. "There she is." There she is," croaked my friend, waving his webbed hand. "Wait a minute," I interrupted. "I thought we were going to see the queen." "She is the queen, and she's my toad cousin, Queenie over here," Scribblehopper called. It seemed Queenie was the sister of the niece of the aunt of the grandmother of the great-great-grandmother's Scribblehopper's mothers. Queenie looked at me with a snooty expression. "And who might you be, Mouse? Do you have a title? Are you at least a count or a prince or something?" She croaked haughtily, No, I am only a knight. I admitted, but that's enough for me to tell you the truth. Queenie sniffled as he smelled something unpleasant. While I am royal blood, I am part of the noble dynasty of the Greenbloods, she informed him with a wave of her silk fan. Scribblehopper hurried to introduce me. Queenie, this is Sir Geronimo Stilton. He doesn't look like much, but he's a klutz. But we're all going to see the Queen together. Thankfully, this time we headed off in the direction of Blossom's Crystal Castle. At last, we arrived at Blossom's Crystal Castle, crossing the pure crystal entrance and down a long corridor filled with tiny, shiny columns. When we reached the glittering throne room with the Queen of the Fairies, she received us as guests. I looked around. Strange, there was no one sitting at a throne. In the distance, I saw a group of fairies with sad expressions. The fairies surrounded a very elderly fairy who leaned on a crystal cane with a diamond knob. Maybe the old fairy knows where to find Queen Blossom, I thought. Isn't there something you should be saying to the elders about a treasure trove of hidden knowledge? I strolled up to the old fairy and said, "Excuse me, could you tell me where I might find this beautiful and beloved Queen of the Fairies Blossom?" The ancient one lifted her veil and revealing white hair, deep wrinkles, and a tired expression. Behind me, Scribhopper croaked. "Oh no." Little Princess Buzz, holy honeycombs, and Queenie muttered, "Not looking good." I had no idea what they were talking about until the old fairy said in a weak voice, I recognize you, but also you don't recognize me. I am Blossom, Queen of the Fairies." Only then did I realize that the fairy wore a blue rose ring on her finger just like Blossom, and around her neck she wore a blue rose medallion and had her head with a blue rose crown. But above all, I noticed the fairy's eyes as blue as the spring sky. "Forgive me, Majesty. I did not recognize you," I said. "It's all right, Knight." Blossom answered kindly. "I hardly recognize myself." "How can we help?" I wailed and started to sob uncontrollably. Then Scribblehopper began crying. "Follow me," the Princess Buzzy said. Finally, even snooty Queenie broke down. Yep, it was a regular cry fest. In fact, we were crying so much our tears formed a lake on the crystal floor. I made a mental note to watch my step. Tears on the crystal surface could make things pretty slippery. Blossom waved her hand to get our attention and said, "Friends, remember that for every problem there's a solution. It's just waiting to be found." She smiled and continued, "Now let's forget about the sadness for a while. I'm not sure you are all hungry after your long journey, so I suggest we sit down together and share a wonderful meal." She clapped her hands. "Fairy of the kitchen, can you prepare our dinner?" A smiling fairy flew towards us, wearing a white apron and a cap, and a little round glass. "Of course, Your Highness," she sang the fairy, whose name was Cimarine. She pointed out a long banquet table. The table had a blue silk tablecloth and was set with the finest china. The glasses were made of pure crystal and were engraved with roses. Wherever they were touched, they made a sweet sound. Yes, the table was certainly set for a very fancy feast. There was only one thing missing, the meal. Right then my stomach began to gurgle. "Oh, how embarrassing." Cimarine," Scribhopper asked, "do you have any food to go along with those plates?" The fairy bent over laughing. "Never fear, frog," she said. "Food is on its way." And she began to sing. "Cheesy pies and fly souffle, nectar rolls made fresh today. Lots of cheese balls to eat. Take a plate, then have a seat. With my hand I stir in the air. I make a meal beyond compare. Like magic, a delicious-looking meal appeared before our very eyes. For every guest, the fairy had conjured up an appropriate dish. There was a giant green leaf brimming with all kinds of flowers for little lazy Buzzy, and candied lava bites for Scribblehopper, and a fly pie with a side of nut sauce for Queenie. For me, there was enough cheese to make a gown of mouse cry. There was enough to make a grown mouse cry with tears of joy. We all attacked the meals like we were starving prisoners, and when we were finished, Scribblehopper let out a loud burp. So much for table manners. After we ate, we gathered in front of the Queen Blossom. She led us to the wall of the throne room, where there was an engraved crystal plaque. Its message was written in the Fantasian alphabet. It said the secret laws of the kingdom of fantasy. We read through them. "I'm sure you are wondering why I look so old," Blossom began. "Time for me has begun passing more quickly than the north wind, and unfortunately, time is also passing at an increased rate for everyone I protect. If we do not fix time, I will perish, and so will the entire kingdom of fantasy. Blossom looked into a silver and ruby mirror, she said. According to the kingdom's secret laws, the enchanted clock held in the land of time is broken, and that is why I am getting older every second. If I die, the entire kingdom of fantasy will no longer exist. Her eyes filled with tears. I implore you, knight, to travel to the mysterious land of time. Find TikTok, the wizard time, the wizard of time, and ask him to repair the enchanted clock. For centuries we've kept perfect time. I am worried that something has happened to TikTok. I chewed my whiskers. What if something had happened to TikTok? Something bad. Oh, and why were these adventures always so scary? Why couldn't they take place in a relaxing seaside resort or in the quiet, peaceful countryside? Before the Queen needed my help, so before I changed, but the Queen needed my help, so before I could change my mind, I squeaked, "I'll do it." After I agreed, the Queen ordered her maids to bring me my armor and a special bag for the trip. I slipped into my armor, then I checked myself out in the mirror. I'm not one to brag, but I thought I looked pretty fierce with a skinny mouse. The fairies also brought me a red velvet satchel. "Knight, this is a magical bag," Blossom explained. "It will shrink or expand in size when you require it. Inside you will find everything you need for the journey, including a feather pen, so you can write about your adventures." Not long after that, a fantastic carriage pulled up in front of the castle, and it was shaped like a shell and drawn by 1,000 pink butterflies. "With this magic carriage, you will travel to the mysterious land of time," said the Queen. Everything was ready for our departure, but right then Scribblehopper cleared his throat and croaked, Your Majesty, how do we reach the mysterious land of time?" "It's so mysterious that even I, one of the most expert guides, don't know how to get there." "Never fear, dear frog, I thought of that," Blossom replied, clapping her hands. "Meet your guide to the land of time." A mysterious, tall, and slender warrior arrived. He wore silver armor and carried a sword. I was dying to know who was clanking around inside that suit of armor. With the face mask down, I couldn't see a thing. "This is Solitaire, the Lone Knight," Blossom announced, waving the knight forward. "You may call him by name, but please be advised that he will not respond to you, because he has made a vow of silence." Then she turned to the knight. "Dear knight, from now on, you will be part of this band of team of seekers. Please take them to the mysterious land of time." Solitaire bowed to the Queen, then turning and stared at us. Well, I guess he was staring at us, but I couldn't be sure. Because of the mask, there was a long pause. I thought the knight was about to say something. I was wrong. He just pointed to the door and motioned to us to follow him. To be honest, the whole not talking thing was a bit creepy, but who am I to question are members of the Queen's staff? Maybe it could be a nice change from Scribblehopper's chatter. Outside, the knight climbed onto the golden carriage, and we clambered into next to him. A moment later, the butterflies flapped their wings, lifted up and up into the air, and another extraordinary adventure in the kingdom of fantasy began. We traveled for about 7 million billion hours towards the mysterious land of time. But Princess Buzzy and Queenie were arguing the whole time. "I must be the first to enter the land of time," insisted Queenie. "It's only right since I am the queen on this trip." "I am the queen of the noble dynasty of the Green Bloods." "Forget it, frog breath," little Princess Buzzy countered. "I am the only royal here. I am Princess Buzzy of the Bees, Green Blood." "Yuck, don't make me sick." The morning turned into afternoon, which turned into night, but those two wouldn't stop bickering. I tried every motion to stop them. First I put on padded earmuffs, but they were so tight around my ears. Then I tried on the knight's helmet, but I still could hear. Finally, I tried wrapping my ears in pairs of clean underwear from the bag Blossom gave me, but that didn't work either. For a minute, I thought Scribblehopper had managed to distract them by telling them a story about the land of time. "It's not like any other land. It seems to be guarded the greatest with treasure," he began. Unfortunately, as those two heard the word treasure, they began to scream even louder. "A treasure? What kind of treasure? Gold? Pearls? Precious jewels? Oh, if they are emeralds, I must have them." Queenie shrieked. "Emeralds are green, of course, just like the color of aristocrats. I'm not sure if I mentioned it yet, but I'm the highest royalty. You know, a descendant of the dynasty of the Greenbloods." Princess Buzzy rolled her eyes. If I hear that word Greenbloods one more time, I will scream. "Who cares about your ridiculous dynasty? Do you have any ideas of how noble we Buzzy bees are? If there's a treasure, the most precious jewels belong to me." At this, Queenie flew into a rage. "How dare you attack my 4 froggies? she croaked. Then she reached over to swat the little princess like a bug she was. I didn't want to be a bee to get squashed, so I jumped in front of her and got squatted instead. Scribblehopper sighed. Did you see that night? He muttered sadly. This is what always happens when you speak of the land of time and its legendary treasure. It triggers the curiosity of many, It triggers the curiosity and greed of many. And so with the queen and the little princess still squabbling, Scribblehopper chattered away in my ear. We continued on and on. Eventually, we reached the mysterious trail of the 7 steps, where we would find the mysterious door of courage, which would lead us to the mysterious land of time. At dawn, the shell carriage landed softly in a grassy field. The butterflies were exhausted. They sucked up a little nectar from some of the flowers and instantly fell asleep. We crept away on tiptoe, following Solitaire to a large rock in the shape of a pyramid. A mysterious message was carved in the rock of the Pantasian alphabet. It said, Door of Courage, and just above it, a long list of instructions for entering the land of time, which was engraved. This was it, I shivered. The path to take the steps right there, the trail of the 7 steps. It said, only 2 travelers may pass. Wait until the sun rises in the morning. Blindfold yourself, walk backwards, count 7 steps, pass through the doors of courage, and you will reach the land of time. Scribblehopper coughed, trembling. I think you need courage to pass through the door of courage, and looks like only 2 of us can pass through. What do you think, and who do you should go? He said. Believe me, I didn't want to go, but what could I do? I had told Blossom I would help, so I made a quick decision. Scribblehopper, you, Princess Buzzy, and Queenie will return to Blossom with the magic carriage. Solitaire and I will continue on the land of time, I squeaked, trying not to notice Scribblehopper doing a little happy dance. What's so scary about this place anyways? I asked the frog. Okay, Knight. You are so naive, Scribblehopper replied. Everyone knows about the door of courage. Many have passed through, but no one ever returned. I twisted my tail. Oh, why do I have to always get myself into such a big mess? Just once, it would be nice if someone met us at the door to the new land, with a smile, a hug, or maybe even a pile of chocolate chewies. Actually, one who knows the most about this land is Blossom's brother, Prince Lucky, the frog explained. Too bad no one knows where he is. According to the mysterious prophecy of 1,000 hearts, one day Prince Lucky, along with a mysterious creature with 1 pen and 4 eyes, 100 dragons, 100 brains, and 100,000 hearts, will save Blossom. A creature with pen, 4 eyes, 100 brains, 100,000 hearts? But who would be that? Who knows, says Scribblehopper. That's why it's called a mysterious prophecy. Do I have to explain everything myself? I blinked. By now my fur was standing on an end. I definitely could have done without the part about no one ever returning from the door of courage. But I couldn't let Blossom down. The sun had finally risen, and Scribblehopper gave Solitaire 2 blindfolds. The knight handed me one to me and covered his eyes, but before I could squeak, Solitaire started walking backwards and disappeared. I'm coming, I said with a trembling pause. I covered my eyes with the blindfold and proceeded to walk down, which wasn't easy. Did I mention I'm not a coordinated mouse? I have trouble drinking with my tall, non-fat cheesy latte. As I walked, I started counting my steps out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When I reached 6 steps, my body froze. Only one more step, and I would pass through the door of courage. Unfortunately, whatever courage I had mustered had vanished. I can't do this, I stammered, reaching for my blindfold. Then just as I heard Scribblehopper croaking, Look, Knight, there's a giant piece of flying cheese right behind you. Flying cheese? This I had to see. I was just about to take off my blindfold. It took one more step backwards. Hack! To my horror, I stepped straight off the cliff. I fell down and down. When I fell, I heard Scribblehopper croak, echoing, Sorry, Knight. It seemed like you needed a little help, reaching for the door of courage. As I fell towards the door of courage, I found myself surrounded by fine, golden, down like the superpower current of a river. But where was it taking me? Suddenly I heard a song. Only then did I understand that the door of courage was in the shape of an immense golden house hourglass. The sound was dragging me towards the center of the hourglass. I started to see other shapes around me. I soon figured out that these shapes were travelers who tried to pass through the door of courage to get to the land of time, but who were trapped in the hourglass forever because their hearts were filled with greed. Rancid rat hairs, would I remain here forever? Right then I reached the narrowest point of the hourglass. I tried to concentrate. There was only one reason why I wanted to go to the land of time. I wasn't looking for money or jewels. I just wanted to save the Queen Blossom. Concentrating on that pure love, I tumbled down through the center of the hourglass and slipped on the other side. I made it. I fell down, down, and down until I hit the bottom of the glass. Next thing I knew, the hourglass magically disappeared, and I found myself in the land of time. The first thing I noticed was that I had landed in the sandy ocean. The next thing I noticed was that there was a terrific wind, and I was getting pelted by a million grains of pure gold powder. It stung my eyes and coated my fur, making it hard to walk. Oh, where was a nice outdoor shower where you needed one? Fortunately, at that moment, a strong hand grabbed me by the paw and pulled me behind a big rock. It was Solitaire. I was so glad to see him. He just nodded and wrote these words in the sand. Let's go, Blossom cannot wait. My happiness quickly faded as I thought about Blossom getting older so quickly. Solitaire set out for decisive steps, nodding for me to follow. He seemed to know the path well. How strange. We marched the golden deserts for hours and hours and hours. I thought about stopping to see if Blossom had packed any bandages in the magic bag, but I didn't want to seem like a wimp, so I kept going. As we crunched along, Solitaire wrote another message in the sand. It read, "This is the desert of the memories." I wondered how he knew that. I was too tired to find out though. The only thing I would remember about the desert was that I never wanted to come back to it. Finally, we saw the silhouette of a castle on the horizon. It glittered in the sunlight because it was made entirely of gold. We approached in silence, while Solitaire was silent because it was silent mouthing. But I was so blown away by the sight of the sparkling castle, I couldn't speak. What a magnificent shimmering structure! Above the door, there was an enormous clock. On each side of the door, there was a statue, one holding a prince's sword and the other holding a queen. Was it my imagination, or did the queen just look like Blossom? The face of the clock showed the moon and the sun, and the hours were marked by precious stones. But the strangest thing was that the hands of the clock were turning very quickly. Near the clock, there was a golden plaque. I read it out loud. Under the plaque, words were engraved in the Fantasian alphabet. The Fantasian writing had said tick-tock timepiece. This was it. Then I noticed that on the clock face there was a signature. I also noticed that their hands were being pushed by the wind, sweeping through the desert of memories. Suddenly someone tapped me on the back. I nearly jumped out of my fur. Was it a witch, a wizard, or a terrifying, playful kitten? Luckily for me, it was only Solitaire. He was so quiet I forgot he was there. The knight motioned for me to climb onto his shoulders so I could reach the clock face. We had to try and fix the clock. I tried to stop the hands, or at least slow them down, but they were moving so fast. Next, Solitaire passed me his sword to see if I could cut the hands off the clock, but the metal was too hard to sever, and instead I nearly chopped off my tail in two. There wasn't anything we could do. That sinister wind was too strong to stop. Solitaire helped me down from the clock. Thank goodness. I was getting dizzy up there. At that point, there were only two ways. There was only one way to stop the clock. We had to into the castle and find the Wizard of Time. Since he invented the clock, he would certainly know how to repair it, right? Too bad the castle was built like a safe. I tried pushing open the front door and hurt my shoulder. Then I tried knocking on and nearly broke every bone in my paw. Solitaire appeared to be waiting for something. Soon the hand of the clock whirled around and hit 12 o'clock. Suddenly, the two statues next to the clock came to life. The prince statue struck the gong with his sword, and a deep sound rang. The queen's statue held out her flower, and spent music filled the air all around us. The giant doors of the castle of time slowly opened us. Deep inside the castle, we glimpsed a sparkling light. I ran towards the light, but I hit a wall and bounced off it like rubber. Only then did I understand that I had bumped into an enormous crystal hourglass. I was past it and found myself in a front thousand of small and larger gears that formed a twisting maze. Cheese and crackers! How would I find the right path to make it through the maze? I stared past, bewildered. Which one should I choose? There was no way I could know which one to decide. I pointed to each one, squeaking, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo." But before I could continue, Solitaire cleared his throat. I gasped. Was the knight going to speak? No such luck! Instead, Solitaire gestured for me to follow him, then began walking confidently, turning left and right. I was glad Solitaire seemed to know where he was going, because I was completely lost. But finally, after one last turn, we ended up in a golden hall. Its high ceilings were painted with glittering stars. In the center of the room, I saw an old man with a snowy white beard and a full beard and moustache. He wore a blue robe embroidered with stars and planets. On his head, he had a pointy hat. On his feet, he wore slippers. He was sitting on a gold throne decorated with sun and moon. This had to be Tik-Tok, the wizard of the time. He gazed at us, penetrating stare. It made me so nervous. "Hello, my name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton, and this is, soundless, solitaire," I mumbled. The wizard didn't blink. I wondered if he ever lost a staring contest. I was about to ask him when I heard his voice. It sounded like someone clearing his throat. Then the throat clearing was followed by a cough, then a snort, and some cracking of the knuckles. "Hello, father, it's me." I turned in shock. Solitaire, the silent knight, was speaking. Solitaire slowly lifted his helmet, and I saw that his eyes were the same deep blue as the eyes of the Wizard of Time. Solitaire, the knight, also known as Prince Lucky. Lucky is the son of the Wizard of Time and brother of Blossom, Queen of the Fairies. He is one of the very noble descendants of the Winged Dynasty. A long time ago, when he left the land of time, he made a pledge of silence and promised to only speak again when he saw his father. Strangely, they were also the same color as Queen Blossom's eyes. Now I was completely confused. Who was Solitaire? Why did he call his wizard father? And what was the big deal with the blue eyes? Solitaire set the record straight. "I am Prince Lucky, son of the Wizard of Time and Blossom's brother. This is the Rooms of Secrets, where the secret of time is held. It has been beloved and safeguarded for centuries. My father is the inventor of the enchanted clock," he explained. Solitaire, or rather Prince Lucky, approached the wizard and said in a grave tone, "Father, we need your help. Blossom, your daughter, my sister, is in trouble. Now, the Tik-Tok timepiece is broken. She's getting older faster than ever. You got to fix the clock or the Kingdom of Fantasy will die." But the wizard just stared at him with an odd look on his face. "Young knight, I have no idea who you are, and I have no idea what you are jabbering about." The prince turned pale. Clearly, this wasn't the heartwarming father-son reunion he had always dreamed about. Just then, an enormous peacock flew into his room. It had a shiny golden body and incredibly sapphire blue feathers. The bird landed silently near the wizard's throne and proudly opened its long tail. Amazing! At the end of the peacock's feathers were tiny little golden clocks. The peacock bowed to the Prince Lucky and said, "Oh, my dear Prince Lucky, my name is Peacock. I'm the trusted advisor of the Wizard of Time, and I'm afraid I have some terribly sad news. Your father has lost his memory and doesn't recognize anything or anyone." Prince Lucky looked crushed, but urged the bird to continue, and so he did. "It all began here in the desert of memories. An evil wind began to blow, the wind of the west, that comes from the kingdom of the witches. Every day it gets a little stronger." As he spoke, we heard the wind howl. He continued, "You see, the Tik-Tok timepiece, which controls the life of the Blossom and the entire duration of the Kingdom of Fantasy, is not broken. It works perfectly well, just like when your father first made it. The truth is that the strong and evil winds of the west are pushing the hands of the clock even faster." Peacock stopped to wipe a tear from his eye with one long feather. Then he added bitterly, "I know who started the wind. It was the wicked witch Eclipse, the same evil creature who sometimes provokes a salty rain of sadness." As soon as the bird mentioned the rain of sadness, a sudden rainstorm erupted. Peacock rolled his eyes and muttered, "See, she heard me speak of her wickedness and wanted to prove it. What a show-off." He lowered his voice and continued, "Still, you should know that the witch's power are becoming increasingly powerful. She has strong alliances with many creatures of the dark side, including the orcs of bad teeth, the thieving owls and the red scorpions, the bottom biters and the lunar werewolves and others." I shivered. Or why couldn't the witch become friends with some creatures of the bright side? Couldn't she find any cherry chimpanzees or carny kingfish or something? I was still thinking about the witch's friends when Prince Lucky said, Night, you must go to the kingdom of the witches to bring an end to the wind of the west." "Me?" I gulped. "But what about you? Couldn't you come with me? Or maybe you could even go with me? I'm feeling a little sick," I squeaked, pretending to cough. Lucky explained that he needed to stay and take care of his father. More than mozzarella. My heart was hammered as I chewed my poor nails like they were my last meal. "You can do it, Knight," the prince said. "Remember, thousands of prophecies of 1,000 hearts, which says that Prince Lucky may save the kingdom of fantasy thanks to a creature with 1 pen, 4 eyes, and 100 brains, and 1,000 hearts." "Yes," I said. "But what is his point?" "I'm trying to understand. The prophecy is about you. You have a pen because you are a writer. You have 4 eyes because you wear glasses. You have 100 brains because you are smart. And most important of all, you have 1,000 hearts because you're generous and kind. This is why Blossom chose you, to help save the kingdom of fantasy," explained the prince. I couldn't believe it. The prophecy was about me. I wasn't sure the 100 brains or 1,000 hearts bit, but it was clear that Blossom needed me, and I couldn't let her down. Prince Lucky assured me that I would not be alone on the journey of the witches. "You have a trusty guide and a detailed description to get you to the Tower Fair, where Eclipse lives," he said. "Before you leave, we must have a go-away party," he announced. He took me to the balcony to see the large crowd gathered below. I saw millisecond sprites, small and jumpy. Then there were minute gnomes who specialized in alarm clocks. Their leader, 60 Seconds, offered me a shiny gold alarm clock. A traveler without an alarm clock is like a... Wow. A traveler without an alarm clock, he declared. 60 might not have been filled with words of wisdom, but I could tell he meant well. Next, I saw dancing owl fairies and bearded century elves. There were also giant named Eon, the oldest inhabitant in all of the land of time. Eon was the only one in the entire kingdom who was old enough to remember every ancient legend ever written. Now that's pretty old. A loud cheer erupted from the crowd. "Hooray for the knight! Hooray for Sir Geronimo! Best wishes for the knight who is about to go in the terrifying and dangerous kingdom of the witches to fight the wicked witch Eclipse. Good luck to the knight, who may never return, or if he does, which is highly unlikely, may not return in one piece. At that very last, he will lose his tail." I gulped. The crowd stared at me expectantly. I knew I could give an inspiring speech, but I could stammer was, "Thanks, I'll try my best." And that I was served a delicious meal in a banquet hotel. When I finished my meal, the door to the room opened, and a funny-looking sprite cartwheeled in. He was round and porter-bellied, and had an intricate design of a clock face sewn onto his vest. He was wearing a pair of puffy pants with white and red stripes, and his skinny legs were covered by green tights. On his head was a green jester that with 3 points, the head that 3 jiggling golden bells on his feet, and he wore flouncy gold slippers with bells that jingled as he walked. He sang in a squeaky voice as he cartwheeled up to me. "I'm the court jester," the strange round sprite announced. "I'll be your entertainment for the night. Thank you very much." Then he pointed at me, laughing. "Hey, there's a mouse in the house. Thank you very much." He ran towards me, pirouetting and shrieking. "Hey, Mousy, what's squeaking?" When I tried to run off, he yanked me by the tail and said, "Come back, I'm just getting warmed up." I turned to Prince Lucky. "Who is this sprite?" I asked. "His name is Hee-Haw. His job is to make everyone laugh." Hee-Haw whirled around making hilarious jumps, but I have to admit, he was funny to watch. But just then, Hee-Haw declared, "I need to volunteer." Before I could squeak, "Not me," he ran towards me, think fast, and he tossed a cream pie in my face. Everyone laughed. I didn't want to be bad sport, so I humbled, "Heh heh heh, good one." "How about this one?" he snickered. Then he tripped me. I fell flat on my face. Oh, how that Hee-Haw got on my nerves. Next he pointed to the ground, and I looked down. When I looked down, he poked me in the snout. While everyone was laughing, Hee-Haw spun around faster and faster. In fact, he was spinning so fast, we just watched him, making me dizzy. I decided I needed a little fresh air, so I tiptoed over to the window and stared out. I saw blue sky and puffy clouds, and a full moon, and 2 enormous green eyes. "Help! There is a monster at the window! Somebody do something!" I squeaked. Everyone looked at me, astonished. The sprites whispered, "Why is the knight so terrified?" The gnomes whispered, "I thought he was brave." The fairies whispered, "I thought he was courageous." Peacock flew over to the window and announced, "Those are the eyes of the dragon of time, knight." Outside the castle window, suspended in midair, was an enormous dragon. He had a clock hanging on his chin with 365 rings around his neck. His scales were emerald, and there were 24 gems along his back to symbolize the hours of the day. On his head he wore a crown that he was covered with precious stones, but now everyone, including the dragon, was staring at me. Of course they were fussing around why a knight would make such a fuss over a dragon. How embarrassing. I didn't want to look like a fool, so I mumbled, well, of course, I knew those eyes belonged to a dragon. Knights and dragons got together like mice and cheese. I was just making a joke. The crowd continued to stare at me. Luckily the prince came to my rescue. Very funny, knight. The Dragon of Time will be your guide to the Kingdom of the Witches. In this chest you will find directions of the Tower of Fear, and everything you will need for a trip. I climbed onto the saddle of the dragon, grabbing the reins with 2 paws. Even though I was scared of my fur, I forced myself to sit up straight. I am off to save the Kingdom of Fan, but before I could finish the word fantasy, the Dragon of Time leaped into space. And so I flew away from the land of time, leaving behind a crowd full of doubts about why I was so famous. While the Dragon of Time flew above the stars, I promised myself that from that moment I would do my best to be brave. After all, I was not Geronimo Stilton, the fearless knight. The only positive thing was leaving was that I would have to deal with an annoying court jester. As we soared higher and higher into the night sky, I tried to calm my jittery thinking. Relax, I told myself. Take some nice deep breaths. So you are flying towards the Kingdom of Witches. So it is terrifying and highly dangerous place from which few return. So the witches might tear out all your fur and leave you squeakless. So you may never see your family and friends again. There's no need to worry. After 3 days and 3 nights of flying, I talked myself into a complete and total panic attack. At last, on the 4th day, when the heat of the sun burning my fur, we reached the Kingdom of the Witches. We circled over the Kingdom of the Witches, passing through waves of dense fog. Below us, gnarled trees and thorny brambles blanketed the ground. Near the center of the kingdom stood the Tower of Bones. Constructed by Eclipse, it was made by many bones and skulls, at 13 floors and pointed windows that shone like unsettled eyes. On the top of the tower there was a large burning fire, the dragon landing behind a thicket of brambles. Lucky had told me that I would find everything necessary for the mission in the chest, so I got off the dragon and flipped it open. To my shock, out jumped Hee-Haw, the pesky court jester. Surprise! He shouted. Happy to see me, knight? I'm here to help. Needless to say, I was not happy at all. I don't need your help. I was not happy at all. I'm on a very important mission here. I don't have time for your silly jokes, I argued. But Hee-Haw just pulled my whiskers and grinned. Oh, come on, knight. I know that you're just a big old scaredy mouse, he insisted. Then he pulled out a scroll of the chest and a note from Lucky on it. Hee-Haw read the letter. Then he said in a sing-song. By the time I finished disguising myself, night had already fallen in that sad and gloomy place. Suddenly I heard cackling laughs. I peeked out from behind the bramble bush and saw a long line of sneering witches carrying chopped wood. They were headed for the tower. Beside the crackling, the witches belched and farted into the night. Their disgusting sounds were amplified by the fierce wind of the west. Witches these days, hadn't they ever heard of a little thing called manners? Unfortunately, the only way to enter the tower was to join the procession of witches. I thought Hee-Haw would be coming with me, but he said, "Oh no, I won't go." Then he added, "Oh, and by the way, try to make it out alive. Otherwise, I'll have to go back alone." The Dragon of Time, who was resisting after the long and difficult flight, opened one eye. "Some kind of help you are. Shame on you for not supporting the knight," he scolded, then turned to me. "Sorry, I cannot accompany you, knight, but everyone would notice me with the green scales and long tail and giant wings and dragon head. In other words, I'd stick out. Just know that I would believe in you, and I will be here for you if you make it out, and ready to fly away." Then the dragon wrapped me in a bone-crushing hug of a humongous wing. "I know that you will make us proud. Good luck," he said. I tried to squeak my thanks, but I was too busy gasping for air. I stumbled off into the night, and with my heart hammering under my fur, not long after, I found myself on the path that led to the Tower of Fear. With cat paw step, I heard a loud crunch. That's when I realized the path I was headed down was not made of pebbles, it was made of bones. And what a stink there was in the air. Of course, I didn't smell so great myself. Inside, I was shaking like a leaf, but on the outside, I tried to look calm. Soon I was surrounded by witches of all types. They greeted me cordially. "Hey you, old slipper, what's your name? We haven't seen you around here." I responded with the first name that came to my mind. My name is Geronimo Misa," which she snapped, "but you can call me Jeremy." One of them patted me on the back. "I like your hat, Jeremy." Another sniffed me delightedly. "Wow, you reek, Jeremy. It smells like trash gone rancid. And look how many flies are flying around you." Another pulled a lock out of my hair. "So, Jeremy, I bet you never wash it. Am I right, Jeremy? Am I right?" Then they all began to sing and dance, and I was forced to imitate them. Until under the full moon, the witches sang. I turned to the witch next to me and asked, "If you don't mind asking, who is you know who? Who is you know who?" "The witch whose name is Mud Splatters," sneered. "Seriously, Jeremy, did you just crawl out from under a cauldron? You know who is, of course, you know who. The foolish blossom of the flowers." Just thinking about her sweet flowery scent made me want to puke. All the witches echoed, "Makes me want to puke." Another witch, Ugly Mug, pulled me aside and exclaimed, "Eclipse's evil plan. You see this very tall tower up there with a magic trap? Eclipse seizes the winds of the Kingdom of Fantasy and mixes them in a large pot of a gigantic fire. And a pot of very evil wind of the west is created. Then with her magic wand she launches it at tick-tock timepiece, making the hands turn more quickly." Spiderleg, a witch who had a tarantula on a leash, cackled, "That's how we'll eliminate revolting you know who." Thinking about Blossom made me want to burst into tears, but I couldn't give away my cover. Luckily, none of the witches seemed to notice my distress. I grabbed a load of wood and trudged along the witches until we reached the Tower Bones. The procession of witches went down a corridor as dark as the belly of a hungry cat and ended in a round room. In the center, sitting on a throne of the sterling silver, was a young witch of disturbing beauty. I say disturbing because she wasn't just beautiful, she was absolutely perfect. In fact, she was so perfect she looked like a mannequin. There wasn't one wrinkle or crease on her face. Her eyes were magnetic, like those of a cat, and her mouth looked like it had been painted by an artist, and her hair was purple and shiny with the thick wavy curls that reached the floor. On her head was a silver crown adorned with a giant white pearl in the shape of a skull. She wore a black velvet dress, and around her neck hung a medallion in the shape of a full moon. In her right hand she gripped a silver magic wand that was connected to her wrist, made of sterling silver. How strange! Who could walk in metal shoes? While the witches danced and sang around her face, then suddenly she raised her arm and shrieked, "Silence! I, Eclipse, the Witch of the Darkness, Queen of Gloom and Doom, ruler of bad choices, evil things, and all-around badness, have something to say." My eyes bulged in surprise. While Eclipse looked young, her voice was raspy and dead, like that of someone much older. Eclipse leaned forward in her chair and demanded, "Whoever knows how to read and write, step forward immediately." All the witches looked at one another, puzzled one by another. I shrugged, "Not me." One witch named Ditzy spoke up, "Your Evilness, why would you want to know how to read and write?" "How boring." Eclipse threw one of the sterling slippers at Ditzy and yelled, "Quiet, you! Did I ask for your opinion?" Just then a short, shrubby witch named Jermic, who smelled like a swamp mud and a dress made of braided, pushed me from behind. "Hey, how about the new witch Jeremy? She must know how to read. She got a book under her arm." I stumbled in my curly slippers as she pushed me and landed right on my snout on the black marble floor. All the witches began rolling on the floor with laughter. "Jeremy can read, and she's a clown. Ha ha! What a strange witch." The only one who didn't laugh was Eclipse. She walked towards me, staring at me intensely. Do you really know how to read and write? Come forward and don't waste my time," she instructed. I hurried courteously, answering in a high-pitched voice, "Yes, your wickedness. I am at your service." She passed me a scroll and ordered, "If you can read, then tell me what is written." I polished my glasses and cleared my throat and read aloud. Spell number 13. How to become young and beautiful again. If an old and ugly witch wants. But before I could continue, she wiped the scroll from my paws, shouting, "Enough! What's wrong with you? Reading my private documents in front of everyone?" I wanted to point out that she was the one who had asked me to read aloud in the first place. But that didn't seem like a good idea, so I kept silent. At that moment, she grabbed me by the neck and declared, "You will become the new librarian of the Tower of Bones. You will put all the books in the witch's library in alphabetical order, which should take at least a century. The rest of you get back to work. I need more wood for fire." All the witches began singing outside. The witch library was at the very top of the tower. By the time I followed Eclipse up the 313 steps, I was huffing and puffing like the Rollins Express train. After I stopped panting, I looked around. I expected to see a stuffy little witch library, but what I saw made my whiskers tremble with fear. In addition to the library, the top floor of the tower was Eclipse's laboratory, and I thought just seeing all those spooky witch books would make my heart hammer. The room was enormous and circular. The floor was made of grey stone slabs inlaid with silver stars. The ceiling was made completely out of crystal, and you could see the dark, airy sky above. In the center of the room, there was a crackling fire. On the fire sat an enormous pot that was as large as a heated swimming pool in my Uncle Rich Rat's backyard. There was writing engraved on the pot. It said, "Pot of the Wicked Winds." The pot was so tall that whoever was stirring it would have to climb up the silver staircase perched next to us. From the pot came a strong swirly wind that made my whiskers whirl. It was the most terrible wind of the west. Next to the pot rested a long copper spoon with a sun on its handle and a large fork with a moon on its handle. I guess Eclipse must have had a thing for stargazing, because a supersized telescope pointed out in an ominous sky. Only then did I notice all the astronomy books. The witch had an incredible library. Eclipse went to a window, leaned out, and pulled out a net made of sparkling silver thread. She emptied the net into the pot, and a mass of mixed winds came out. Then she blew onto the pot with her stinky breath. As the witch stirred, she muttered to herself, "Forward bug breath. If I could stop stirring for 1 minute, these winds would get all crossed and entangled." Then she called to me, "You Jeremy, come here and stir, and be careful not to let clumps of wind form on the bottom, understand? Or I will transform you into a tadpole." I just decided that in addition to working for her as a librarian, you'll also be my wind mixer. I swallowed hard and hurried to obey. "I will stir up all my strength, your evilness." I climbed up and looked into the pot. All the winds mixed together, forming a violent and smiley current of air. The witch meanwhile kicked off her silver shoes, sending them clattering to the floor. Then she snorted, "Ah, those metal shoes are killing me. They're worse than those 4-inch platform bat-wing boots." Eclipse went over to the darkness corner of the laboratory and collapsed on a chair that looked like a throne. She lit a candelabra. Under her golden chest was a locked key, and began a study series of scrolls. Perched on her left shoulder was an owl with yellow eyes named Blinkers, and above her head suspended the chair with a purple bat named Screech. On the armchair stood a blue spider. How strange! I'd never seen a blue spider before. Even stranger, the spider wore a little crown on his head and a little chain attached to one of his legs. But I had no time to think about the spider. I had work to do in the library. The place was a colossal mess. I began to put all the books in alphabetical order. There were thousands of books. Eclipse wasn't kidding. This job was going to take me centuries to complete. When I was shelving the books, I just kept thinking about Blossom. I had to figure out a way to counter-react. Eclipse's spell that was producing the wind of the west. How did she even capture the wicked winds in the large pot? Maybe the answer was in the scrolls she was studying. Quiet as a mouse, I approached the scrolls to take a peek. But Eclipse saw me and swiped at me with her broom, shrieking, "Get lost, spy! If I catch you touching my secret scrolls again, I'll cut off your paw." The owl pecked me, hooting, "Shove off, witch!" The bat flapped in my face, screeching, "Shoo, Stinky!" Only the blue spider said nothing. After a while, Eclipse dozed off on the chair and began to snore loudly. What a racket! A few minutes later, the blue spider squirreled up to me and whispered in my ear, "You must be careful, witch. Do you know how many librarians Eclipse has already turned into tadpoles?" He pointed to a fishbowl filled with tadpoles, swimming around dejectedly. "She's niblets," the spider reassured me with a kind tone. "But don't worry, I will help you. My name is Webster. I'm the king of the blue spiders." I shook his little foot and squeaked, "Pleased to meet you. My name is Geronimosa, witchy snout, but please call me Jeremy." The spider smiled. He told me that Eclipse was the most evil of her 7 sisters. "She has sisters?" I asked. Webster looked at me curiously. "How come you don't know this, Jeremy? Even the youngest witch knows about the sisters." He pointed out, if you weren't hideous and ugly, and your breath wasn't disgustingly stinky, and you weren't dressed in black with a pointy hat, I'd say you're not a witch. I hurried to respond. Of course I am a real witch. I even have a broom. The spider pointed at a frame on the wall with paintings of the 7 witch sisters. Of the witches I immediately recognized Cackle, whom I had already met on the several previous trips. Cackle and Eclipse are sisters? Yikes. I didn't want Webster to know, but those witches terrified me. So listen, what are all those moldy scrolls Eclipse is studying? I asked the spider, trying to forget about Crackle. Webster sighed. They are the bewitching scrolls. Don't ever touch them if you value your life, and you don't want to turn into a bag of bones or squash like lumps of whiskers, or a sad, starving skeleton in a witch dress. He was about to go on, but I held my paw. I get the idea, I whispered, horrified. Webster showed me the silver chain attached to his little leg. See this? He said. Eclipse is keeping me hostage. She's enslaved the entire blue spider population. I was shocked. What does she make you do? The spider lowered his voice. She makes us weave an invisible net, which she used to snare all the wicked winds in the kingdom of the witches. She used spell number 14 from the bewitching scrolls. My eyes opened wide. Finally, the mystery was beginning to unravel. Eclipse under spell number 14 to create the wicked wind of the west. At last, I knew what I had to do. I had to get my paws on those bewitching scrolls without being turned into a bag of bones. As I spent more time with the witches, I realized there was only one moment of each day when Eclipse was busy and no one else would bother me in the laboratory. It was early in the morning. Eclipse would disappear behind a silver door labeled secret room, locking it with a loud click. Meanwhile, her owl would still be out hunting prey, and that bat was still in a deep sleep, hanging in the golden perch. And that was when I could examine the bewitching scrolls. So one morning I waited, pretending to be putting away the witch's books. As soon as she went into the secret room, I put up my eyes into the keyhole. What I saw made my blood run cold. This witch held a silver mirror decorated with precious rubies. Blistering blue cheese, it was identical to the one that I had seen in Blossom's hands before I left. The witch had ordered. Spying mirror, tell me the latest news. The mirror laughed and began to speak. Well, let's see. This morning Blossom got up at 6, held a sip of dew for breakfast, washed her hair with honeysuckle and rose petal rinse, then practiced some peaceful meditation. The witch interrupted. You foolish piece of glass. Those details don't interest me. Tell me if she has become older and uglier. The mirror hurried to show her image of Blossom, even more wrinkled and tired. The witch cackled, satisfied. Excellent. My plan is working. The wind of the west continues to make the timepiece hand turns, and little Miss Goody Two-Shoes ages by the minute. Then Eclipse began to sing. Thinking of Blossom made me want to cry. I had to save her. Suddenly, the door to the secret room burst open and Eclipse ran out, heading out for the stairs. I'm going to my room to rest. I don't want to be disturbed, understand? She yelled before disappearing. This was it. I ran to examine the bewitching scrolls. Leafing through them, I grew more and more anxious. What if someone discovered me? With one eye, I tried to read, and with the other, I tried to see if the witch was coming. With my left ear, I tried to listen for the owl, and with my right ear, I tried to hear if the bat had woken up. It was so stressful, I couldn't handle the pressure. My whole body was trembling. Get a grip, Stilton, I told myself. Then calm thoughts. Imagine you're in a peaceful place like a beautiful beach or a lush green forest. The beaches are warm and sunny, and the forest doesn't have any unfriendly creatures like terrifyingly trolls or wicked witches or giant eating boa constrictors. Okay, maybe thinking wasn't such a good idea. Now where was I? Oh yes. Eventually, I came upon a scroll labeled spell number 13. After I read it, I was scared out of my fur. Spell number 14, 15, 16, 45, and 87 were no picnic either. Oh, what a nightmare. Now I was horrified. This evil magic practically made this witch invincible. There was only one way to fight her. I had to find an even more powerful spell. That was so impossible. I began to sob. Without thinking, I wailed. Now I'll never be able to save Queen Blossom. Right then, Webster appeared by my side, dragging his chain. Oops, I hadn't forgotten about the spider. Blossom, he said. How do you know her, Jeremy? You're a witch, not a fairy. Then he stared at me and murmured, Hey, wait a second, I noticed you. I had whiskers like a mouse, and a nose just like a mouse. And aren't those the ears of a mouse? Oh well, I guess my witch disguise wasn't foolproof. Webster grinned now that he knew my true identity. I knew you were too nice to be a wicked witch, he exclaimed. You're too kind, I said, blushing modestly. What can I say? Even when I'm dressed up like a witch, I can't help behaving like a gentle mouse. I will tell you a secret, Webster said, handing me a scroll. This is the most powerful spell of the bewitching scrolls, number 1000. With this spell, you can cancel all the other spells executed by Eclipse. Quickly, I read spell number 1000. Finally, I'd have way to save Blossom. Spell 1000. How to cancel spells. Close your eyes, plug your nose with your right hand, pull your left ear with your left hand, and stick out your tongue, and say out loud. Witches with wands, warlocks with bats, poisonous spiders, and rapid black cats. Cancel the spells that are already done. Terminate all spells, every last one. I raced over to the pot of the wicked winds. There was no time to lose. I climbed up the silver stairs and stared into the pot. Inside, the stinking mixture was bubbling and boiling as it blended together to form the evil wind of the west. Holding onto my pointed hat so I didn't get blown away, I closed my eyes, then I plugged my nose with my right paw. I pulled my left ear. I stuck out my tongue and said aloud the magic words. And then I stopped. Rats. I forgot how the spell went. I ran back and reopened the chest, but the wind lifted the scrolls into the air. I tried to catch them, but right then Blinkers the owl began to beat on the window. For someone to let him in, and Screech the bat yawned, slowly waking up. I also heard the footsteps of Eclipse click-clack and the stairs as she approached. Hurry, Webster urged, or everything will be lost. I tried again, filled with panic. Cats and poisonous wands, bats and rapid spells. I heard the witch behind me yell furiously. Who dared to touch my bewitching scrolls? At this point, I wanted to jump into the boiling pot and call it a day. But I couldn't do that to Blossom. I had to keep trying, so I did, and this time I got the words right. Just like that, the winds of the west lost power and vanished. I had completed my mission. But before I could celebrate, I heard an icy voice behind me. Full of terror, I turned and saw, a few inches from my snout, was at the wrinkle-free face of Eclipse. She stared at me with her icy eyes that showed no emotion and hissed. Well, 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 who do we have here? So you aren't an ugly witch. You're the ugly mouse spy. She raised the silver wand high, threatening me. You were able to stop the wind of the west, but I will get revenge. Now you will feel my power. Whatever you have heard about me, I have much, much worse. She came closer and hissed. Maybe I will transform you into a warty toad, or I will lock you in a dark prison for 1,000 millennia, or I'll throw you in a pot of the wicked winds. Tell me your name, so I can have it carved onto the headstone, if I even decide to give you a headstone. But as Eclipse continued to shriek, I realized something strange had happened. Wrinkles were sprouting all over her face, her nose shriveled and her chin sagged. Her hair went from shiny purple to frizzy white, and her back became stooped. It worked. Spell number 1000 cancelled all the spells done before, and Eclipse is returning to her old cranky old witchy self. While she was always cranky, but now she's wrinkling back up like a prune. Webster yelled happy. I was so excited. If Eclipse was getting older, that meant Blossom was getting younger. Yet everything was working exactly how I hoped, but a minute later disaster struck. The marble floor began to creak, the walls began to shift, and the whole tower of bones began to crumble. Oops, Webster mumbled. I forgot to mention, the Tower of Bones was also constructed with a spell. Now that was a piece of information that would have come in handy, I groaned. Still, I didn't want to make Webster feel bad, so I grabbed him, put him in my pocket, and started running. As I raced down the stairs, I counted the floors. 30th floor, 12th floor, 11th floor, 10th floor, 9th floor. But just as we passed the 8th floor, I found myself in the front of a giant gaping hole in the stairs. As if I tried to take one more poor step, I was a goner. Just like the crumbling towers of bones, on what to do. I was hoping some brilliant idea would come to me, but nothing did, so I stuck my head out of the window and squeaked help. It was right then that I saw the most incredible sight I could imagine. The dragon of time was hurtling through the sky, heading straight for me. The dragon wagged his tail to let me know that he had seen me. But who was in the saddle holding the reins? It was Hee-Haw. He yelled triumphantly. Never fear, Hee-Haw is here. The dragon accelerated and was soon right in front of me. Hee-Haw reached for me with his hand, and I took it, just as the Tower of the Bones fell to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. I sank onto the dragon right behind Hee-Haw. Congratulations, knight. You have succeeded in completing your mission, the dragon cheered. I felt like I was on top of the world. It felt so good to have somebody save Blossom, and to have me to save her. I thanked Hee-Haw for his help. Who would have thought that the pesky court jester would be saving my life? Don't thank me, knight. I knew we'd be tight, he snickered, bopping me on the nose. Oh well, some things never change. Webster was celebrating in my pocket too, but then I spotted Eclipse on a broomstick. What did she want? The witch hung in the air with her broom vibrating. She held out one gnarled hand and cackled. Not so fast, Mousy. I'm done with you. The bat yelled. Yeah, you don't have all the facts. The owl added. That's right, there's more to the story. What was the witch up to now? The dragon of time echoed my fears. The witch must be planning some other way to rule the kingdom. Hee-Haw shook his head and sighed, wonking me in the eye and jiggling bell on his hat. I was just glad, but now I'm sad, he complained. The witch shrieked, you haven't won, because even though you stopped the wind of the west, crushed the tower bones, you can't destroy the layer of darkness. That is not a work of a spell. It is the work of the blue spiders. Ha ha ha. I didn't know what Eclipse was talking about, but before I could ask, she started flying away. Get ready, Mouse, she yelled, yelling over her shoulder. In 3 days, there will be an eclipse of the moon. That is when you will lose it all. The witch aimed her broom directly towards the ground, and she pointed a magic wand at a white stone in the shape of a skull. Doom door, open up, or else. The white stone slowly rose, revealing a dark tunnel. Eclipse flew right into the tunnel and disappeared. Questions swirled around her brain, like clothes tumbling in a dryer. What just happened? I squeaked, terrified. Where did the witch go? What did she say? I would lose it all. What is the layer of darkness? What will happen in 3 days? Why does the eclipse of the moon matter? I was so filled with questions, I felt like I was about to explode. Webster explained that the witch's doom door led to the underground crypt. That's where Eclipse had imprisoned all the other blue spiders. After they made the invisible net, she's now forcing them to weave the layer of darkness. It can be darker than the sky of the Kingdom of Fantasy forever. She's planning on using it in 3 days, when there will be a lunar eclipse. Webster waved one long leg in the air. We must stop the witch and save my subjects, he declared. But first let me tell you about the history of the spiders. Listening to Webster's story about the imprisoned spiders made me feel sad, mad, and scared at the same time. I was sad because I felt bad for the spiders, of course, who had wanted to live underground weaving your little legs off day in and day out. I felt mad because I could just picture the nasty, selfish witch ordering the blue spiders around, and I felt scared because I knew the only way to help the spiders was to comfort the witch. Did I mention I'm a bit of a scaredy mouse? I'm deathly afraid of witches, dark places, scorpions, and sleeping bags. I once got my tail first stuck in my sleeping bag zipper. Ouch. But that's another story. Anyway, we all agreed that we had to act quickly to stop the witch from executing her evil plan. We need some sort of special weapon, Webster suggested, something tough enough to cut through the dark layer of darkness. But I have no idea what that fabric is super resistant. The Dragon of Time spoke up. I know of an object that could cut through the layer of darkness, but it would be incredibly difficult to get. We have to try, I said. It's our only hope. He all nodded in agreement, bonking me again with his jingling bells. Oh, why couldn't he just switch to a soft, nice knit cap instead? Maybe he could ask Blossom for one for his birthday. The Dragon of Time interrupted my thoughts. In the Kingdom of Fantasy, there is something called the Crystal Sword. It is an enchanted sword with legendary powers. The blade is polished with stardust, sharpened with moonstones, and washed with fairy tears. Where do we find it? I asked. The dragon sighed. That's the problem. The sword belonged to King Azul, who lives in Sapphire City. The sword could be dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands, so the king keeps it guarded in a remote place known as the Shriek Peak. I know Azul. I made him my 6th trip to the Kingdom of Fantasy, I squeaked. We travelled all day and all night back on the Dragon of Time until we saw the shining moon mountain. We flew up Shriek Peak and finally arrived at Sapphire City. The city in the clouds, bright as the warm rays of the sun, tinted the clouds of gold. Here's where we would find Azul, the ancient one with the eyes of sapphire. The dragon landed outside the confines of the city and stayed there to wait for us. After I had put on my armor, Hee-Haw, Webster, and I set out for the palace. There we met 7 knights dressed in beautifully colored 7 colors of the rainbow. We are the honorable guards of Azul. Please follow us. Azul is waiting for you, declared the knights. That was odd. How did the king know we were coming? As we walked through the spectacular city made of clouds, my paws sank into the soft ground. It was like walking on marshmallows. We passed lots of fancy houses, but eventually we stopped in front of a simple dwelling. This was Azul's house.
The wiser rule knew that it's not the size of the house and that counts. It's those inside that matter the most. Inside, Azul was sitting on a simple wooden chair. He wore a long white tunic, which I must admit reminded me of my Aunt Sweetford's bathrobe. His eyes were as blue as sapphires. Even though I had met the king before, I still felt nervous. Azul was one impressive ruler, who was famous in the kingdom of fantasy for his profound wisdom. I bowed before the king. "I'm not sure if you remember me. I am Stilton, Geronimo," I mumbled. Azul interrupted, saying kindly, "I know." "Oh well, I am here because," I began again. "I know," the king said once again. I blinked confused, until I remembered then that Azul had a magical ability to read minds. He knew exactly what I was thinking. I blushed, wondering if he caught my thoughts about his outfits. Azul addressed me warmly. "My dear Sir Geronimo Stilton, how could I forget you? You'll always have a home here. Oh, don't worry about it. I know my robe looks like a little funny, but I must tell you, it is comfy. But now by now I was as red as a tomato. Oh, how embarrassing." As I continued, "Please speak freely," Azul said. "I will listen." So I said, "The witch eclipse, but maybe you already know. She is the layer of darkness, but maybe you already know. We need to cut it before the eclipse of the moon, but maybe you already know. And so we need the crystal sword, but maybe you already know." Azul nodded tranquilly, with his gaze fixed on mine. Then he closed his eyes, and for a minute I wondered if he had dozed off. Finally his eyes opened, and he said, "In fact, I already knew." I wasn't surprised. "Now tell me something I don't know. Tell me the answer to the riddle of the enchanted pomegranate, and the crystal sword is yours." Then he stood up and said, "Follow me." We climbed aboard a crystal carriage pulled by 3 winged horses. The carriage flew up a shriek peak, the tallest mountain in the kingdom of fantasy. "Don't look down," I warned myself, clinging on the side of the carriage for dear life. When we landed, Azul pointed at a riddle and engraved on a plaque of ice. Azul then pointed out 3 paths that branched in front of us, and instructed me to choose one. I looked down at the 3 roads. They were very different. At the start of the first road, there was a shiny gold sign. It read, "Road to Riches." It was paved with golden coins, and I could see a piles of precious, glittering gemstones along the path. If I walked down that road, I could pick up more money than the wealthiest mouse on Mouse Island. I could move out of my modest mouse hole and into a mansion. It was tempting, very tempting. On the second road was a shiny silver sign that said Bragger's Boulevard. It was paved with mirrors. Under every mirror was written a little saying like, "You're better than everyone. The whole world is jealous of you, and you're perfect in every way." If I chose that road, I would be the most confident mouse on the block. It would be nice to think of myself so highly. It was tempting, very tempting. The sign above the third road was made out of old wood. It read, "Simple Street." There was no gold coins or shiny mirrors on this path. It was made of plain dirt and stones, and had narrow, unequal steps. I stood silent, staring at each path. Which one should I take? I knew my decision could either lead me to the crystal sword or to disaster. Oh, why did these adventures always force me to make so many decisions? I had trouble even deciding between a cheese bagel and a cheese sandwich. I turned to Azul, hoping he could guide me, but he refused to make eye contact. I had to make this decision on my own. Once more, I hit the 3 roads. Then I had a look at it. It hit me. I was a simple mouse. I had to be true to myself and take the simplest path. So without any more hesitation, I looked down and took off to the simple street, until I found myself in front of the most wonderful sight, a giant pomegranate made of entirely precious stones. The skin was made of rubies, the tree it grew on was made of diamonds, and the leaves were made of emeralds. Slowly the enchanted pomegranate opened into 4 pieces, and then in the very center of the fruit sat the crystal sword. I looked and took a step forward and grabbed the sword. I did it. I had chosen the right path. At last, the crystal sword, otherwise known as the Sword of Truth, was in my paws. I was so excited, I felt like dancing. Only I didn't dare. The sword was sharp. I didn't want to slip and cut off my tail. Suddenly, I was overcome with emotion. Who would have thought that I, Sir Geronimo of Stilton, could be trusted with such a powerful object? Of course, I still had to do work. I still had to cut the layer of darkness and save Blossom. Would I be able to deliver what was expected of me? Would I be able to complete my mission? Would I be able to take off my night boots soon? My paws were killing me. Right then, Azul put his hand on my shoulder. "Do not worry," he said. "You will be able to complete your mission. The sword will keep you on the right path. If it is used for evil purposes, the sword will turn red and feel heavy in your paws. If it is used for good purposes, it will be sparkling blue and feel light in your paw. I looked down at the sword in my paw. It was sparkling blue and didn't feel heavy. So I figured that was a good sign. There was only one question I still need to ask Azul. How would I return the sword to you when I finish with it? I mean, will you send someone to pick it up, or do I need to bring it back myself? The king shook his head, smiling. No messenger service is required, knight. The crystal sword from now on will stay with you, and it will accompany you on all your adventures in the kingdom of fantasy. It is rightfully yours because you have demonstrated that you are worthy. I couldn't believe it. The crystal sword was mine. I'd never owned anything so important, so powerful, so magical, and while so sharp. I just hope I didn't poke my eye or anything precious body part by an accident. Azul took the sword and touched the tip of it to my shoulder as I knelt before him. You are worthy, he declared. You are worthy, echoed the guards. But as soon as I got up, Azul and his guards disappeared in a cloud of blue. Only the crystal sword remained in my paw, letting me know that it wasn't all a dream. When I returned to my friends, Hee-Haw ran up to me. Wow, you got the crystal sword? Hey, can I hold it? He begged, the court jester. Webster climbed up along my arm until he reached the sword. Ooh, shiny, he murmured, staring at it as if in a daze. Can I climb on it? Can I? Can I? Before I could respond, the dragon of time appeared by my side. Azul asked me to come get you, he explained. Everybody hop on board. We left immediately for the kingdom of witches. There wasn't much time. Eclipse was almost here. We traveled all night and all day long until finally, just before sunset, we arrived where the tower bones had once been. As soon as we landed, I ran towards the doom door, where we had to save the spiders and destroy the layer of darkness. But when I reached the entrance to the underground prison, I saw a small spider crying his little heart out. Webster ran up to him to give him a warm hug. The spider was his nephew, Itsy Bitsy. Oh, Uncle Webster, sobbed the little spider. The witch forced us to finish the layer of darkness, and she left with her army of witches. She's going to destroy the kingdom with her evil plan. Webster patted the little spider tenderly. It's all right, he said. Just tell me which direction the witches flew in. With the little leg, Itsy pointed to her left. That way, I heard him squeak. She was going to Petrified Peak. She was going to wait for the eclipse and then launch the layer of darkness into the sky. Without a moment to lose, we ran up towards the peak. As we were leaving, I heard Itsy calling after us. Be careful! Eclipse and the witches are not alone. She also brought all the creatures from the dark side of the moon. We jumped on the dragon of time, and he soared off in the direction of the Petrified Peak. I was so worried about the witches and dark creatures, I could hardly think straight. To the peak, shouted the dragon. To the peak, yelled Webster. To the peak, I mean the place where we're going, I stammered. Jeez, niblets, I was a nervous wreck. Soon we reached the black swamp and the river of regret. A mountain stood out fierce across the horizon, the Petrified Peak. By now, night had fallen and everything looked extra dark and spooky. Oh, only if I had brought along a flashlight and a lantern or my battery-operated cheese border clown lamp. Still, I couldn't worry about the dark now. Time was ticking and the witch was probably getting ready to launch the layer of darkness. Hurry, yelled Hee-Haw. We have to stop her. The dragon of time beat his wings furiously, rising higher and higher to reach the peak. When we got a little closer, we saw that a large crowd had gathered on the side of the mountain. It was all the creatures from the dark side of the moon. A lump formed in the pit of my stomach. I felt like I had swallowed a whole block of cheddar in one gulp. The witch was so close to claiming victory, so as the moon rose, we glided over Eclipse's horrid army. Eclipse flew over on her broom to the top of the Petrified Peak. When she arrived, she strutted through the throngs of her subjects, as if she was a supermodel. Finally, she reached Monaco, the one-eyed king of the giants. It's showtime, she cackled. Time to conquer the kingdom of fantasy. Send me up, big guy. The giant stepped forward. In his enormous hands, he held what looked like a huge paper airplane. Attached to the plane was a dark fabric. It was, you guessed, the layer of darkness. The giant placed the plane on the ground, and Eclipse leaned onto it. Are you ready, your wickedness? Monaco asked the witch in a booming voice. Seat belt fastened, crown straightened, broom in the proper position. Ready? Eclipse screeched. Of course, I'm ready. Now stop asking ridiculous questions and toss this plane into the air. I'll unroll the layer of darkness in the air and darken Kingdom Fantasy forever. Just then the sky grew a shade darker. Then an eclipse was starting. Hurry up, you fool, the witch ordered. What are you waiting for? A text message from the moon? Toss me up. Toss her, the other witches and all the other creatures in the dark side of the moon chanted. Monocle raised the little airplane with the witch on top and threw it with all his might. As soon as she took off, Eclipse unrolled the layer of darkness. It stretched out like a dark blanket in the sky. At exactly the same moment, we too arrived at the peak of the peak, and certainly left me petrified. But I tried to look brave. The dragon of time turned his body until we found ourselves face to face with Eclipse. The witch was waving her arms in the air triumphantly. I was so glad you could make it to try and be a hero. Little mouse and friends, how charming. Now you will get a witness my amazing victory. She pointed at the layer of darkness. This is the toughest material in the entire kingdom. Nothing can destroy it. I took that as my cue to pull out the crystal sword. Are you sure nothing can destroy it? I squeaked, doing my best to sound confident. Then I waved the sword in the air, trying desperately not to slice off my whiskers. Immediately, Eclipse's face turned pale. Well, it was already pale, but you get the idea. Her face turned even paler. That can't be the crystal sword. That old piece of loving cute Azul would never be part of this, she yelled. With a shaking paw, I lifted the sword higher so Eclipse could get a good look. You're wrong, I squeaked. This is the crystal sword. Azul gave it to me because he knew I would use it to fight evil. For Blossom, for the kingdom of fantasy, and I sliced right through the layer of darkness. Let's go, I cried to the dragon. He launched himself forward and flew hard until we were under the layer of darkness. At that point, the sky turned completely black. Cut it, he shouted. From somewhere under me, I could hear the witch's army yelling, don't cut it, don't cut it. Of course, I already knew what to do. With one swift movement, I lifted up the crystal sword and sliced the blackness, severing the layer of darkness. The dragon was right about the sword. It sliced right through the steely fabric like it was made of fresh cream cheese. My friends let out a cheer of victory. Woohoo! We did it! Underneath us, we could hear the disappointing grumbling of Eclipse's army, and all the creatures of the dark side of the moon. Meanwhile, the witch herself was a terrible bad sport, yelled insults in our direction. This isn't the end, rat, she shrieked. You will be sorry someday. But as she was screaming, the layer of darkness began to fall, tumbling down into the river of regret, and Eclipse disappeared within the sky. The moon returned to shine brightly in the sky. The eclipse was over, and I had succeeded at completing my mission. The kingdom of fantasy was safe at last. While the dragon of time flew back towards the kingdom of fairies, I clutched the sword that Azul had given me. Who knew if Eclipse would return to battle again? Nothing was certain, but at least I will always have my trusty crystal sword. We traveled for about 20 million days and 20 million nights. Well, okay, maybe it wasn't that long, but it felt like forever. I was so happy I completed my mission, but I was very tired. I couldn't wait to go home to see my family, to take a hot, nice cheddar bath. Oh, and on the way, until finally I glimpsed a light in the distance. I blinked my eyes slowly. Underneath us were the beautiful lush lands of the kingdom of fairies. The dragon of time slowly glided towards the ground until I saw the steeples of Blossom's crystal castle. We landed at the Dragon Airport. Wow! While the Royal Fairy Orchestra played a welcoming serenade in honor of our return. What an honor it was to be honored. At the entrance to the shimmering crystal castle, we saw the queen. Blossom's back was to us, and we couldn't see her face. My heart hammered away under my fur so hard I felt like it would explode. Was the queen as useful as she used to be? Of course, I would love her either way. Wrinkles or no wrinkles, whether Blossom's face had turned smooth and young again, it meant that time had been put back on track, and that kingdom of fantasy was saved. Just when I thought I would faint from anticipation, the queen turned herself around. She was back to her old self. Her hair was returned to its rich turquoise color, and she was smiling brilliantly, and she was no longer leaning on a cane. Blossom threw her arms around me in a warm embrace. So, Sir Geronimo, once again you have not only saved me, but you have saved the entire kingdom of fantasy. How could I ever repay you, she said quietly. I shuffled my feet and said modestly, oh, it was nothing. I just had to climb an enormous rose bush, walk backwards off a steep cliff, escape from a mad witch's lair, prove I was worthy of magical crystal sword, and stop the eternal darkness during a lunar eclipse. The queen reached forward and placed an olive on my head. Dear knight, she said, let me offer you the simple but precious crown. I am awarding you to the title Knight of Peace. Everyone cheered, then I heard some familiar voices in the crowd. Me first, each one insisted. It was Cribble Hopper, his cousin Queenie, and little Princess Buzzy. They were arguing over who got to hug me first. In the end, Scribblehover reached me first, crushing me so hard I almost fainted. Then someone in the crowd yelled, "Hey, when is this party going to start?" Blossom smiled. "Now we will celebrate. My niece, Princess Precious, the garden for all the winged creatures in the kingdom, will provide you entertainment." A very small young fairy came forward. She had her hair in 2 braids and wore round glasses just like mine. Sitting on her shoulder was the queen of the butterflies. I knew it was the queen because she wore a glistening crown on her head, which was made of tiny dewdrops. When the princess gave me a signal, an immense parade of multicolored butterflies appeared. They flitted all over the crystal ballroom in a spectacular and elaborate dance. Blossom took my right paw and Princess Precious took my left, and we danced and swirled in perfect rhythm, with the butterflies around and around the room. But maybe one of us wasn't in perfect rhythm. Can I help it if I had 2 left paws? Still, I tried my best not to step on too many toes. As we were dancing, I noticed Princess Lucky talking and laughing with her father, Tick-Tock, the Wizard of Time. I went over and asked, "Tick-Tock, how are you?" He smiled at me. "I'm very well, thanks to you, Knight." As soon as the wind of the west stopped blowing, my memory returned. But I still had one last question to ask the wizard. I've been wondering about it since the beginning of my adventure. What is the treasure in the land of time that so many travelers search for? The wizard smiled kindly. "My dear Knight, I do not reveal the secret to many, but you have proven that you are more than trustworthy. I'll tell you. In the land of time, there is a unique treasure of inestimable value. No, it is not the gold sand in the desert of time, though it is pretty, or my beautiful golden palace, or the precious Tick-Tock timepiece. It is something you cannot buy, and is more precious than gold, pearls, and diamonds. Can you guess what it could be?" I thought about Wizard's question. Suddenly, I had to answer. What could be more precious in the land of time than time itself? I told the wizard, and he nodded. "You are right, Knight. In fact, nothing is more precious than time. Nothing can stop it, and no one can buy it." For a moment, I imagined what it would be like if we could buy time. I pictured myself at the store purchasing a block of time. What could I use it for? Would I use 10 extra minutes before my alarm rang in the morning? Would I use 15 extra minutes to make myself breakfast? Then I might be able to whip out something nice of my grandma's old whiskers, delicious cheddar cheese popovers. What a way to start the morning. Or maybe I could spend extra time with my family. I could take my nephew Benjamin to the park or go golfing with my grandfather William. Though I have to admit, golfing isn't exactly my sport. The last time I played golf, I missed the ball and accidentally swung my golf club into the lake. I was thinking about my flying golf clubs when I realized the crowd was staring at me. "Speech, speech," they shouted. I turned red with embarrassment. I'm not the one to give speeches, especially in front of a large crowd. What if my paws shook, or I started stuttering? What if the wind blew a piece of dirt and got into my eye? I started crying and couldn't stop. Forming a puddle at my feet, the puddle turned into a lake, and I started to drown. Well, okay, maybe that wouldn't happen, but to be honest, when I looked down at the smiling faces, I started to relax. Now, no one would really care if my paws shook. Everyone just wanted to hear what I had to say. So I smiled and said, "My dear friends, thank you all so much for honoring me. I have learned many things on my journey to the land of time, but most of all, I've learned that time is the most precious treasure, and we should never waste it." Everyone applauded. A warm feeling came over me as I realized I had one more thing to help bring peace and happiness to the kingdom of fantasy. Then I heard the sound of bells. It was the bells that was time for the entire land signaling the hour. And what a magical hour it was, an hour of peace and happiness. And something strange happened. The chiming bells were so soothing I fell asleep still standing. I was having a nice peaceful snooze when suddenly the bells grew louder and louder and louder. I came to with a start. When I looked around, I realized I was no longer in the kingdom of fantasy. I was sitting in the blue porch in the clock shop back in Luna City. Around me, all the alarms, clocks in the shop were ringing and buzzing. "What happened?" I stammered in front of me. I saw the smiling faces of Minute Mouse and his wife Eloise. "We fell asleep," and Eloise sweetly said. "Just like your grandfather, he falls asleep when he sits in the porch chair too. You two are so alike." Minute Mouse chuckled. "Sorry to wake you, Geronimo. Our clocks ring every hour on the hour." "It's okay. I should get going anyways," I said, waving goodbye, and stumbling to the door, still in a daze. Minnie Mouse came running after me. "Wait, you forgot your watch," he said, holding it out to me. "Oops, how could I forget my watch? It's why I came here to the repair shop in the first place." I put the watch in my ear. It tickled softly in a steady rhythm. I thanked Minute Mouse and I tried to repay him for the job, but he refused. "No charge for you," he said with a smile, clapping his paw on my shoulder. "Don't forget to say hello to your grandfather." I thanked him again, and he was already through the door when I remembered something. What was the magical secret about the starry rose plant? I asked. Minnie Mouse laughed. Oh, the secret is that it doesn't have thorns. Most rose bushes do, you know. It's not really magical. I just like to tell my customers that for fun. No one really believes me. I blushed. I guess I'm not the average customer. Then I remembered something else. But whatever happened with the tick-tock timepiece? I asked. This time it was Eloise's turn to laugh. Oh, Geronimo, she said with a grin. You didn't really believe that story, did you? I thought you knew it was all just fantasy. But now I just turned red as my Uncle Cheesy Belly's spicy tomato sauce. Well, of course, well, certainly. Without a doubt, I knew it was all just a made-up story. I coughed. Was I the only one on the block who believed in magic? I waved goodbye again and headed towards my home. By then, the sky was dark and a full moon lit up in the street. Ah, what a beautiful night. As I began walking, glistening snowflakes began to fall. I stuck out my tongue so I could catch some. There's nothing like the taste of cold, fresh snowflakes. While the moon was lighting my way, I didn't even have to worry about the dark. Did I mention I'm afraid of the dark, cramped elevators, and enlarged bubblegum bubbles? As I walked home, I couldn't stop thinking about my adventure in the Kingdom of Fantasy. The whole thing was so fresh in my mind, and I couldn't wait to write down and publish my next book. It was my 8th adventure in the Kingdom of Fantasy, as I would call it, the Hour of Magic. I learned that time was truly precious. Finally, I arrived in front of my house. But before I could pull out my key, my grandfather called. Grandson, what are you doing here? He said. Well, I live here, I squeaked, confused. Grandfather laughed. Just teasing you, he said, smacking me on the back so hard I practically fell over. So how'd it go? Did you come up with an idea for the book? Yes, Grandfather, I did. I'm going to write about the adventure I just had when I went to the clock shop. I squeaked. I climbed up a magical plant and I traveled through Scribblehopper the frog and Solitaire, the knight, and the Princess Buzzy, the bee, and I fell into a humongous hourglass, and I pretended to be a witch, and Grandfather held up his paw. Okay, grandson, don't give me the play-by-play. Just get writing. Your deadline is almost here, and I will not tolerate lateness. I grinned, remembering what Minute Mouse and Eloise had told me about Grandfather. He may be act tough, but deep down, he was proud of me. I love you, Grandfather, I squeaked. I love you too, grandson, replied Grandfather, hugging me. I hugged the rest of my family too. They were all inside waiting for me. It felt good to be home. Later that night, I lay in bed thinking about my adventure. I'd learned, and a lot, from my trip. From now on, I will really value time spent with my family and friends, and of course that meant my friends from the Kingdom of Fantasy too. I had a feeling I would be seeing them again someday, and when I do, I'll make sure to tell you all about it. The end.